The silver ship moved through space like a blade cutting through black silk, its hull reflecting the distant light of the yellow star ahead. Commander Zexathara stood on the bridge of the Star Herald, his forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the primitive world grow larger on the main screen. His purple skin had the deep shade that marked him as nobility among the Vorthak Empire, and his three eyes studied the blue and green planet, with the cold calculation of a predator examining easy prey. Scan results complete. Commander, reported his science officer, a younger Vorthak whose skin still held traces of the lighter purple of youth. The dominant species appears to be bipedal, carbon-based, and confined to the planetary surface. No evidence of faster-than-light technology or even basic energy shields. Zexathara's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his kind. In his 300 years of service to the Empire, he had catalogued dozens of primitive worlds, and this one seemed no different from the rest. The inhabitants had barely managed to leave their atmosphere, using crude chemical rockets that would have been laughable if they were not so pathetic. Their largest artificial structures in space were simple metal constructs that served as research stations and communication relays. Any signs of organized military resistance? He asked, though the question was more protocol than genuine concern. Minimal space-based defenses, the science officer replied, manipulating holographic displays with practiced efficiency. They appear to have nuclear weapons limited to planetary use, and some orbital satellites that might serve defensive purposes. But nothing that could threaten our shields or weapon systems. The bridge crew worked quietly around them, their purple forms moving with the fluid grace that came from centuries of genetic optimization. The Vorthak had conquered 47 worlds in the past millennium, each victory adding to their empire's vast collection of resources and slave populations. This world, which their databases had designated as Terra or Earth depending on which human language was being referenced, would be number 48. Begin standard subjugation protocols, Zexathara commanded. Send the surrender demand through all available communication frequencies. Give them one rotation to respond. Far below on the blue world, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the command center of Liberty Point, humanity's most advanced space station orbiting 300 miles above Earth's surface. The station served as both an early warning system and a coordination hub for the planet's modest space defense network. Jake had spent 30 years in the United States Space Force, working his way up from a fighter pilot to the position he now held, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for the moment when his communications officer turned to him with confusion written across her face. "Sir, we're receiving some kind of transmission from the unknown vessels near Jupiter," Captain Lisa Parker reported from her position at the communications console. Her blonde hair was pulled back in the regulation style, and her blue eyes reflected the concern that everyone on the station was feeling. "It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously, but the language is completely unknown." Jake moved to her station and looked at the scrolling data on her screens. 3 days ago, telescopes had detected the arrival of 5 large objects in the outer solar system, moving in formation and clearly under intelligent control. Every attempt to communicate with them had been met with silence. Until now. "Can we get any kind of translation?" he asked, knowing that Earth's most powerful computers were already working on the problem. "The AI systems are trying to find patterns, but without any reference point it could take days or weeks," Lisa replied. "However, based on the mathematical sequences embedded in the transmission, our linguists think it might be some kind of demand or ultimatum." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Humanity had dreamed of first contact with alien intelligence for generations, but every scenario they had planned involved some form of peaceful communication. The arrival of unknown ships that ignored all attempts at dialogue suggested something far more sinister. On the research vessel, New Frontier, positioned near the moon to conduct deep space observations, Dr. Kevin Yang worked frantically to decode the alien transmission. The ship's advanced laboratory equipment hummed around him as he ran the signal through every analysis program available. Kevin had dedicated his life to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, but the reality was proving far different from his optimistic expectations. "The mathematical structure suggests a countdown," he reported to Captain Danny Clark, the ship's commander. "If I'm reading this correctly, we have approximately 18 hours before something happens." Danny Clark had been a military officer before joining the space research program. and his instincts were screaming warnings. "What kind of something?" he asked, though he suspected he would not like the answer. Based on the power signatures we're detecting from those ships and the aggressive tone of the transmission, "I think they're giving us time to surrender," Kevin replied, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. Back on Liberty Point, Jake Morrison made the decision that would change everything. He opened a priority channel to Earth's Global Defense Command and requested an immediate conference with the planet's military leaders. Within an hour, generals and admirals from every major nation were linked into the communication network, their faces grave as they listened to the analysis of the alien transmission. General Amy Rodriguez from the International Space Defense Force spoke first. "If these aliens think they can just show up and demand our surrender, they've made a serious mistake about who they're dealing with. We need to assume hostile intent and prepare accordingly," added Colonel Steve Mitchell from the United States Strategic Command. "Our space-based assets are limited, but we do have options." Jake looked at the tactical display showing Earth's defensive capabilities. They had nuclear missiles that could be retrofitted for space combat, orbital platforms that could be weaponized, and fighter craft that were designed for atmosphere, but might function in space with modifications. Against unknown alien technology, these resources seemed pitifully inadequate, but they were all humanity had. "I recommend we attempt one more communication effort," suggested Dr. Maya Patel from the Scientific Advisory Council, her voice carrying over the conference link from her laboratory in Geneva. "If we can establish any form of dialogue, we might avoid conflict entirely." Jake nodded and turned to Lisa Parker. "Send a response on all frequencies. Tell them we are a peaceful species interested in communication and trade. Make it clear that we will defend ourselves if necessary, but that we prefer diplomatic solutions." The response from the alien ships came 12 hours later, not in the form of words, but in actions. The 5 vessels moved from Jupiter's orbit toward Earth, their massive forms accelerating at rates that defied human understanding of physics. Long-range sensors detected energy buildups that suggested weapon charging, and the largest ship began broadcasting what could only be interpreted as targeting data. Commander Zexathara read the human response with the same cold amusement he had shown earlier. The primitive creatures were attempting to negotiate, as if they had any choice in the matter. The translation software had easily decoded their simple languages, revealing a species that still believed in concepts like diplomacy and peaceful coexistence. Such naivety was common among worlds that had never faced the reality of galactic politics. They refused to surrender immediately, he reported to his superiors via quantum communication. "Beginning attack pattern 7. Estimate complete subjugation within 2 planetary rotations." The die was cast, though neither side yet understood the true magnitude of what was about to unfold. The Vorthak saw a simple conquest, another primitive world to add to their empire's collection. Humanity saw an existential threat that demanded every ounce of their courage and ingenuity to survive. Neither species realized they were about to discover just how dangerous it could be to underestimate an opponent, and how quickly the hunter could become the hunted when faced with prey that refused to die quietly. The first alien attack came at dawn over the Pacific Ocean, when most of humanity was still waking up to what they thought would be an ordinary day. The Vorthak ships descended from high orbit like falling stars, their weapon systems charging with energy that made the very air crackle with electricity. Commander Zexathara had chosen his targets carefully: major military installations, space centers, and population hubs that would demonstrate the futility of resistance. The beam that struck Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado turned 3 square miles of concrete and steel into a glowing crater. Similar attacks hit military facilities across 6 continents, each strike precise and devastating. The message was clear: surrender or watch your civilization burn. But instead of the expected panic and capitulation, something entirely different began to happen. General Amy Rodriguez stood in the emergency command bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain, watching reports flood in from around the globe. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful, but their attacks had been surgical rather than apocalyptic. They were trying to break human will without destroying the infrastructure they intended to claim. That tactical decision would prove to be their first critical mistake. "Damage reports coming in from all sectors," reported Colonel Steve Mitchell, his fingers flying over tactical displays. We've lost 40% of our satellite network and most of our major space defense installations, but civilian casualties are surprisingly low. Amy nodded grimly as she processed the information. The aliens wanted Earth intact, which meant they needed humanity alive but defeated. That gave her people options that might not exist if this were a war of total annihilation. "What's our current defensive status?" she asked. "We still have submarine-based nuclear missiles, mobile launcher systems, and the orbital platforms that weren't targeted in the first wave," Steve replied. "Plus every military base that wasn't hit is now at maximum alert." On Liberty Point, Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated with Captain Lisa Parker as they watched the alien ships take up orbital positions around Earth. The space station had survived the initial attack, probably because the aliens saw it as too insignificant to bother with. That oversight was about to cost them dearly. "The aliens seem to think they've won already," Lisa observed, monitoring the enemy ships through the station's sensors. "They're not maintaining combat formations anymore." Jake smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Then let's show them how wrong they are. Launch all defensive satellites and arm them with everything we've got." Dr. Kevin Yang worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the New Frontier, analyzing data from the alien attacks. The research vessel had been ignored entirely, allowing him to study the enemy weapons and energy signatures without interference. What he discovered changed everything. "Their shields operate on a rotating frequency," he explained to Captain Danny Clark over the ship's communication system. "Every few seconds, the energy barrier shifts to a different wavelength. It's incredibly sophisticated, but there's a pattern." Danny leaned over Kevin's shoulder to study the scrolling data. "Are you saying we can predict when their shields will be vulnerable?" "More than that," Kevin replied, his excitement barely contained. "I think our quantum processors can disrupt the rotation sequence entirely. If we can modify our weapons to emit the right frequency at the right time, we might be able to punch through their defenses." The first human counterattack came 6 hours after the initial alien assault. Colonel Steve Mitchell led a squadron of retrofitted nuclear missiles, their warheads replaced with experimental quantum disruptors based on Kevin's research. The missiles launched from hidden silos across North America, their trajectories calculated to converge on the largest alien vessel simultaneously. Commander Zexathara watched the primitive projectiles approach with casual interest. Human nuclear weapons were dangerous to their own kind, but harmless against Vorthak shield technology. He did not even bother to order evasive maneuvers, confident that the missiles would simply dissipate against his ship's defenses like raindrops against a window. The quantum disruptors activated 3 seconds before impact, sending cascading pulses of energy that interfered with the alien shield generators. For a brief moment, the Vorthak ship's defenses flickered and failed. The nuclear warheads detonated against bare hull, and the massive vessel shuddered under the impact. "Impossible," Zexathara hissed, his 3 eyes widening as damage reports flooded his bridge. The humans had somehow bypassed shields that had protected Vorthak ships for centuries. How did they adapt so quickly? His science officer worked frantically at his console, trying to understand what had happened. "Commander, it appears they found a way to disrupt our shield frequency rotation. The mathematical precision required should be beyond their capabilities." On Earth, every military leader was watching the tactical displays as the alien ship's shields failed. The massive vessel was still functional but clearly damaged. And for the first time since the invasion began, humanity had proof that their attackers were not invincible. "All units, focus fire on the damaged ship," Amy Rodriguez commanded through the global communication network. "Don't give them time to repair their shields." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every weapon system that could reach orbit opened fire on the wounded alien vessel. Conventional missiles, railgun projectiles, and even modified satellite platforms joined the assault. The Vorthak ship, designed to face enemies using similar technology, found itself overwhelmed by the sheer variety and unpredictability of human weapons. Captain Lisa Parker coordinated the orbital defense from Liberty Point, using the station's communication array to link every human asset in space. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Morrison of the Human Space Defense Force. You have attacked our world without provocation. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." The response came in the form of energy beams that tried to target the space station, but the other alien ships were now moving cautiously, clearly shaken by the destruction of their flagship's shields. The humans were not behaving like any species the Vorthak had encountered before. On the research vessel New Frontier, engineer Claire Adams worked with Kevin Yang to develop new countermeasures. Claire had spent her career designing spacecraft systems, but the alien technology presented challenges she had never imagined. If their shields work on frequency rotation, maybe we can develop a weapon that constantly shifts its own frequency to match, she suggested. Kevin nodded enthusiastically. A frequency-matched particle beam that adapts in real time. It would take enormous processing power, but if we link every quantum computer on Earth into a single network. The idea was audacious and technically complex, but humanity had never been short on either audacity or technical innovation. Within hours, computer systems across the planet were being networked together. Their combined processing power focused on a single task, cracking the alien shield technology. Captain Danny Clark found himself in command of humanity's first captured alien technology when the damaged Vorthak destroyer attempted an emergency landing in the Pacific Ocean. His crew aboard the New Frontier reached the crash site first, using the research vessel's submersibles to explore the alien wreckage. "The ship is mostly intact," reported Claire Adams from inside the alien vessel. "Their technology is incredibly advanced, but I think I can figure out how some of these systems work." The boarding operation was dangerous and unprecedented, but it provided humanity with its first close look at Vorthak technology. Every component was studied, analyzed, and reverse-engineered with a speed that would have impressed even the aliens. Human scientists and engineers worked around the clock, driven by the knowledge that their planet's survival depended on understanding and adapting enemy technology. Commander Zexathara received increasingly urgent reports from his surviving ships. The humans were not only fighting back effectively, but somehow improving their capabilities with each engagement. Their weapons were becoming more accurate, their defenses more sophisticated, and their tactics more unpredictable. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildups across the planet's surface," his science officer reported. "It appears they're constructing some kind of planetary defense network." Zexathara's mandibles clicked nervously. This was not how primitive worlds were supposed to behave. They should have surrendered after the first demonstration of Vorthak power. Instead, these humans seemed to be using each attack as a learning experience, adapting and evolving their defenses at an impossible rate. The turning point came when Dr. Maya Patel's team at the International Research Facility successfully activated the captured alien communication system. For the first time, humans could listen to Vorthak military transmissions and understand their tactical discussions. "They're confused and frightened," Maya reported to the Global Command Network. "They keep talking about how we're not behaving like other primitive species. They expected us to surrender immediately." General Amy Rodriguez smiled grimly as she processed this intelligence. "Then let's give them something to really be confused about." Launch Operation Wasp Sting. Operation Wasp Sting was humanity's first coordinated counterattack, using fully adapted alien technology. Fighter craft equipped with quantum disruptors and frequency-matched weapons launched from hidden base 6 months after the first alien attack. Earth looked like a completely different world. Construction crews worked around the clock building massive defense installations, while factories that had once produced automobiles and electronics now churned out spacecraft and weapon systems. The transformation was so rapid and complete that even the humans involved sometimes stopped to marvel at what they had accomplished. Director Helen Brooks stood in the command center of the Global Defense Initiative, watching holographic displays that showed the current status of humanity's expanded military capabilities. The facility had been built inside a mountain in Switzerland, chosen for its central location and natural protection against orbital bombardment. Helen had been a logistics coordinator for the United Nations before the invasion, but the crisis had thrust her into a role she never could have imagined. "Status report from all sectors," she requested, her voice carrying the authority that came from 6 months of successful crisis management. Engineer Tony Garcia stepped forward from his position at the Technical Analysis Station. Tony had been working on experimental aircraft engines when the aliens arrived, but now he led the team responsible for adapting captured Vorthak technology for human use. "We've successfully reverse-engineered their basic propulsion systems," he reported. "Our modified versions are actually more efficient than the originals because we've combined their gravity manipulation technology with our own fusion power systems. The breakthrough had come when human engineers realized that alien technology was designed for alien psychology. The Vorthak built systems that were reliable and predictable, following established patterns that had worked for centuries. Humans, on the other hand, had a talent for improvisation and unconventional thinking that allowed them to find applications the original designers had never considered. Pilot Rachel Foster walked into the command center still wearing her flight suit, fresh from a test mission in one of the new hybrid fighters. Rachel had been a commercial airline pilot before the invasion, but her steady nerves and quick reflexes had made her a natural choice for the experimental flight program. The Mark 7 prototype performed perfectly, she announced with barely contained excitement. Top speed is now 3 times faster than the original alien fighters, and the maneuverability is incredible. Helen smiled as she processed the report. Human pilots had proven to be far superior to their alien counterparts, not because they were physically better suited for space combat, but because they were willing to take risks that more cautious species would never attempt. The combination of human creativity and alien technology was producing results that neither side could have achieved alone. Dr. Sandra Kim entered the command center carrying a tablet filled with data from her latest research project. Sandra had been studying theoretical physics at MIT when the invasion began, but now she led the team responsible for developing faster-than-light communication systems. "We've established contact with our deep space monitoring stations," she announced. "The quantum entanglement communication array is working perfectly." The achievement was remarkable not just for its technical complexity, but for how quickly it had been accomplished. The Vorthak had taken centuries to develop similar technology, but human scientists had managed to create a working system in less than half a year by approaching the problem from completely different angles. Captain Ben Murphy commanded Earth's first interstellar strike force from the bridge of the newly constructed starship Defiance. The vessel was a perfect example of human innovation, built using alien materials and technology but designed according to human tactical principles. Where Vorthak ships were massive and heavily armored, the Defiance was fast and maneuverable, bristling with weapons that could be rapidly reconfigured for different types of combat. "All squadrons report ready for departure," announced Commander Lisa Park from her position at the tactical station. Lisa had transferred from Liberty Point to join the new interstellar fleet, bringing her experience with space-based operations to the expanding human military presence. Ben nodded as he reviewed the mission parameters on his command display. Intelligence reports indicated that the Vorthak were building a staging area in the Alpha Centauri system, preparing for a second invasion attempt. The human response would be swift and decisive. Strike the enemy before they could organize another attack on Earth. "Take us out," Ben commanded, and the Defiance engaged its hybrid propulsion system. The ship accelerated smoothly away from Earth, reaching speeds that would have been impossible with purely human technology. But the real surprise was what happened next. Instead of following predictable flight paths like other spacefaring species, the human fleet split into multiple groups and approached Alpha Centauri from different directions. Each ship followed a unique route, using gravitational slingshots and course corrections that made their movements impossible to predict or intercept. Captain Ryan Bell led the reconnaissance element of the fleet in the modified research vessel Explorer. Ryan had been a submarine commander before joining the space program, and he brought the stealth tactics of underwater warfare to the vacuum of space. His ship used captured alien cloaking technology enhanced with human electronic countermeasures, making it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. "Target area approaching," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Sarah Williams. Sarah had been working at mission control for NASA when the invasion began, but her expertise with orbital mechanics had made her invaluable for planning interstellar missions. Ryan studied the tactical display as it updated with new information from their passive sensors. The Vorthak staging area was larger than expected, with dozens of ships and several massive construction platforms. "They're building something big," he observed. "Pass this intelligence back to the fleet immediately." The information reached Captain Ben Murphy just as the main human force entered the outer edge of the Alpha Centauri system. The Vorthak had indeed been preparing for a second invasion, but their plans were about to be permanently disrupted. "All ships, begin attack pattern Delta," Ben commanded through the quantum communication network. "Remember, We want to capture as much of their technology as possible. The human attack began with a series of coordinated strikes against the alien sensor networks. Small fighter craft darted between the larger ships, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid enemy fire while targeting critical systems. The Vorthak defenders found themselves facing an enemy that refused to follow established rules of space. Combat Commander Velkara of the Vorthak construction fleet watched in disbelief as human ships attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. The primitives should not have been capable of interstellar travel, let alone mounting such a sophisticated military operation. How did they get here so quickly? She demanded of her tactical officer. Unknown, Commander, came the reply. Their ships are using technology that appears to be based on our own designs, but their tactical doctrines are completely unfamiliar. The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Human forces had learned from their defensive actions at Earth, developing new weapons and tactics specifically designed to exploit Vorthak weaknesses. When the fighting ended, 3 alien ships had been captured intact and the construction facility was under human control. Back on Earth, Dr. Kevin Yang analyzed data from the Alpha Centauri operation in his laboratory at the expanded International Research Complex. Kevin had become humanity's leading expert on alien technology, and his latest discoveries were opening up possibilities that seemed almost magical. Their faster-than-light travel system works by manipulating space-time itself, he explained to a gathering of scientists and military leaders via holographic conference. We can not only copy their technology, but improve it by using human mathematical models that approach the problem differently. Engineer Claire Adams nodded as she reviewed Kevin's data. Claire had been promoted to head of the Alien Technology Integration Program after her success in reverse engineering captured Vorthak systems. If we can improve their FTL drives, we'll be able to move our fleets faster than they can respond to our attacks. The implications were staggering. Humanity had gone from being confined to a single world to potentially becoming the fastest-moving military force in the galaxy, all in the space of 6 months. The transformation was so rapid that even human leaders sometimes had trouble believing what they had accomplished. General Amy Rodriguez reviewed reports from military commanders around the globe as she prepared for the next phase of human expansion. Amy had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Global Defense Forces, a position that had been created specifically to coordinate humanity's increasingly complex military operations. Our production capacity has increased by 400% since the invasion began, reported Colonel Steve Mitchell from his position as head of Military Industrial Coordination. We're now building ships faster than we can train crews to operate them. Amy smiled as she considered the problem. It was a good problem to have, especially. News of humanity's victories spread through the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond, carried by quantum communication networks and trade route gossip chains that connected thousands of civilizations. In the great council chambers of a dozen different species, emergency sessions were convened to discuss what many were calling the most significant military development in over a millennium. On the Vorthak homeworld of Kethmaran, Supreme Commander Veltar stood before the High Council, his purple skin darker than usual with stress and fatigue. The ornate chamber around him had witnessed the planning of countless successful conquests over the centuries, but now it echoed with voices raised in confusion and fear. Explain to us again how a primitive single-world species managed to destroy 3 of our battle fleets, demanded Counselor Drexhigh, her forearms gesticulating in the ritual patterns of extreme displeasure. Veltar consulted his holographic display before responding. The humans appear to possess an unprecedented capacity for rapid technological advancement. In less than 1 standard year, they have progressed from basic chemical rockets to faster-than-light capability. Their tactical doctrines are unlike anything in our military databases. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vorthak Empire had built its power on the predictable nature of technological development. Every species they had encountered followed similar patterns of gradual advancement over millennia. The humans were rewriting the rules of galactic civilization. Emperor Drexmore himself entered the chamber, his massive form commanding immediate attention from all present. At over 500 years old, he had personally overseen the conquest of 23 worlds, and his experience made his next words particularly chilling. "We face an enemy that learns from every encounter," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Each time we engage them, they emerge stronger and more dangerous. This is not conquest. This is survival." Meanwhile, in a completely different part of the galaxy, Ambassador Carlos Rivera sat in the elegant reception chamber of the Zelani Republic's diplomatic complex. Carlos had been chosen to represent humanity in its first official contact with a peaceful alien civilization, and the conversation was proving more enlightening than anyone had expected. Ambassador Silthira of the Zelani studied the human across from her with eyes that reflected genuine concern. The Zelani were an ancient species known throughout the galaxy for their wisdom and diplomatic skill, but even they seemed shaken by recent events. "Your species concerns us greatly," Silthira admitted, her crystalline voice carrying harmonics that conveyed complex emotional undertones. "In 3,000 years of galactic history, we have never encountered a civilization that advances so rapidly or fights so effectively." Carlos leaned forward in his chair, genuinely curious about the alien perspective. "Is rapid development really so unusual? On Earth, we've always assumed that technological progress was natural and inevitable. Most species require centuries to master technologies that your people have learned in months," Silthira explained. "The Vorthak Empire itself took 2 millennia to develop interstellar travel capabilities. Your achievements are unprecedented." The conversation was interrupted by an aide who whispered urgently in Silthira's ear. The ambassador's expression grew even more concerned as she listened. "We have just received reports of human military activity in 7 different star systems," she announced. "Your expansion rate is accelerating beyond all predictions." Carlos smiled, though he tried to keep his expression diplomatic. "Humanity has learned that the best defense is often a good offense. We're establishing forward bases to ensure that Earth can never again be threatened by surprise attack." What Carlos did not mention was the full scope of human expansion plans. Captain Ryan Bell's reconnaissance missions had identified dozens of systems suitable for human colonization, and construction fleets were already en route to begin establishing permanent settlements. On the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, Captain Derek Hayes reviewed star charts with his navigation officer, Lieutenant Emma Clark. Derek had been commanding merchant vessels before the invasion, but his experience with long-range navigation had made him valuable for the expanding exploration program. "System designation Kepler 442 appears ideal for our purposes," Emma reported, highlighting a star system on the holographic display. "Rocky planets in the habitable zone, asteroid belts rich in useful minerals, and no signs of existing intelligent life." Derek nodded as he studied the data. Human expansion was proceeding on multiple levels simultaneously. Military bases to secure strategic positions, research stations to study alien technology, and colonial settlements to ensure species survival. The pace was exhausting but necessary. "Set course for Kepler 442, he commanded. "Let's claim another system for humanity." The news of human expansion was not going unnoticed by other galactic powers. In the crystal spires of the ethereal collective, beings of pure energy debated the implications of this new aggressive species. The ethereals had transcended physical form millions of years ago, but even they recognized the potential threat posed by rapidly expanding humans. "Their pattern of development suggests unlimited growth potential," observed the entity known as Luminous Thought of Distant Stars. "If current trends continue, they could dominate this entire galactic sector within a few centuries." On the mechanical world of the Silicon hegemony, artificial intelligences calculated probability matrices and reached similar conclusions. The machines had eliminated their organic creators eons ago, and now existed as pure logic, but even they found human unpredictability disturbing. "Recommend immediate diplomatic contact," suggested the AI designated as Strategic Analysis Unit Prime. "Human technological advancement rate suggests they may pose existential threat to established galactic order." Back in human space, Dr. Jennifer Wallace led a team of xenobiologists in studying the various alien species humanity had encountered. Jennifer had been researching marine biology before the invasion, but her expertise with non-human life forms had proven invaluable for understanding galactic biodiversity. "We've identified 47 distinct, intelligent species in our expanding area of Operations, she reported, to the Global Defense Council via quantum communication link. Most appear to be peaceful, but several show signs of potential hostility. General Patricia Ross, now commanding the Human Interstellar Defense Force, reviewed Jennifer's report with interest. Patricia had been promoted rapidly through the ranks as humanity's military structure expanded to meet the demands of interstellar warfare. "What's your assessment of the immediate threats?" Patricia asked, studying the species profiles on her display. "The Razor Claw Confederacy appears to be a loose alliance of warrior species that might see us as either a threat or an opportunity," Jennifer replied. "The Hive Mind Collective is completely alien in psychology, making their intentions impossible to predict. But the most concerning is the Shadow Fleet." Patricia's expression grew serious. The Shadow Fleet was a mysterious group of ships that appeared and disappeared without warning, leaving destroyed civilizations in their wake. Human intelligence had detected their energy signatures in 3 different systems, but no direct contact had been established. "Recommendations?" Patricia asked. "Avoid contact with unknowns until we're stronger," Jennifer suggested. "Focus on building alliances with peaceful species while expanding our military capabilities." The strategy was already being implemented across human space. Captain Nicole Adams led diplomatic missions to establish trade relationships with friendly aliens, while Colonel Marcus Johnson expanded the network of human military bases throughout the local galactic region. On the industrial world of New Pittsburgh, established in a system humanity had designated as Sector 7, massive factories worked around the clock to produce ships and weapons for the expanding human fleets. The planet had been terraformed using captured alien technology in record time, demonstrating humanity's growing mastery of galactic engineering techniques. Factory supervisor Tony Lee watched production statistics scroll across his displays with satisfaction. Tony had been managing automobile production lines before the invasion, but now he oversaw the construction of interstellar warships using assembly techniques that combined human efficiency with alien technology. "We're exceeding production quotas by 30%, he reported to Earth Command. "At current rates, we'll have doubled our fleet strength within 6 months. The numbers were staggering. Humanity had gone from 0 interstellar capability to operating one of the largest space fleets in the galaxy, all in less than 2 years. The transformation was so rapid that even human leaders sometimes struggled to comprehend the scope of their achievement. Admiral Victoria Stone commanded the human fleet from her flagship Enterprise, a massive vessel that combined the best of human and alien technology. Victoria had been commanding ocean-going warships before the invasion, but she had adapted to space warfare with the same tactical brilliance that had made her successful on Earth's seas. "Intelligence reports indicate the Vorthak are massing for another attack," reported her intelligence officer, Commander Frank Miller. Frank had been working for the CIA before the invasion, but now he coordinated human intelligence operations across multiple star-sci. The Vorthak Empire's greatest weapon had never been used against a living world before. The Starkiller device represented the pinnacle of their military technology, a massive construct capable of destabilizing stellar cores and causing supernovas that would incinerate everything within light years. Emperor Drexmore had authorized its deployment with the cold calculation of a leader who had finally recognized an existential threat to his civilization, Grand Aim. Admiral Colves stood in the command center of the dreadnought Void Render, watching as the largest fleet in Vorthak history assembled around the Starkiller weapon. Over 1,500 warships had been gathered from across the Empire, representing the combined might of 47 conquered worlds. The massive construction hung in space like a metallic moon, its surface bristling with energy collectors and quantum manipulation arrays. "Final systems check complete," reported the chief technician, his purple skin pale with the stress of preparing such a devastating weapon. "The Starkiller is ready for deployment to the human home system." Colves nodded grimly. The device would take 3 standard days to reach the human system and position itself for optimal effect. Once activated, it would cause their star to collapse into a black hole, eliminating not just the human homeworld but the entire solar system. It was brutal and absolute, but the Empire had learned that half measures were useless against these particular enemies. "Begin movement to the target system," he commanded. "Maintain maximum security protocols. If the humans detect our approach, they might attempt a desperate counterattack." the massive fleet began its journey toward Earth, moving through hyperspace corridors that had been carefully mapped to avoid human patrol routes. The Vorthak had learned from their previous encounters that humans possessed an alarming ability to detect and intercept seemingly secure communications and movements. On Earth, General Chris Taylor stood in the expanded Global Defense Command Center, reviewing intelligence reports that painted an increasingly grim picture. Chris had been promoted to Supreme Allied Commander after demonstrating exceptional strategic thinking during the previous alien attacks. The responsibility of defending humanity's homeworld rested squarely on his shoulders. Long-range sensors are detecting massive movement in Vorthak space, reported Intelligence Director Maya Patel from her station. Maya had expanded her research into alien psychology and tactical analysis, becoming humanity's foremost expert on enemy capabilities and intentions. Chris studied the holographic displays showing enemy fleet movements. The scale was unprecedented, more ships than humanity had ever faced in a single engagement. "What's your assessment of their intentions?" he asked. "Based on the fleet composition and movement patterns, this appears to be an all-out assault intended to end the war permanently," Maya replied. "But there's something else. We're detecting energy signatures from an unknown massive construct at the center of their formation." Dr. Nathan Price entered the command center, carrying a data tablet filled with analysis from his weapons research team. Nathan had been developing experimental defense systems since the first alien attack, and his latest project represented humanity's most ambitious technological achievement yet. "The quantum disruption field generator is ready for deployment," he announced. "If our calculations are correct, it should be able to interfere with any large-scale energy manipulation device the aliens might be using." Chris nodded, though he privately wondered if any defensive measure would be sufficient against what appeared to be the Vorthak Empire's final gambit. "How long until the device is operational?" 48 hours for full deployment," Nathan replied. "But we'll need to position it in the outer solar system to be effective." The preparations began immediately. Every human ship capable of faster-than-light travel was pressed into service, carrying components of the massive defensive system to strategic positions throughout the solar system. It was a desperate race against time, with humanity's survival hanging in the balance. Engineer Grace Turner worked frantically in the asteroid belt, supervising the construction of automated mining and manufacturing stations. Grace had been designing industrial robots before the invasion, but now her self-replicating construction systems were humanity's best hope for rapidly expanding their defensive capabilities. "Production rates are exceeding all projections," she reported to Earth Command via quantum communication. "We're now building defensive platforms faster than we can install them." The asteroid belt had been transformed into a massive industrial complex, with automated systems strip mining entire asteroids for raw materials and converting them into defensive weapons and support platforms. Human engineering efficiency combined with captured alien technology had created a manufacturing capability that rivaled anything in the galaxy. Captain Alex Stone commanded the Deep Space Patrol vessel Phoenix as it conducted reconnaissance missions along the expected Vorthak approach routes. Alex had become one of humanity's most experienced space combat commanders, and his tactical insights were invaluable for planning defensive strategies. "Contact bearing 27 Mark 8, reported his sensor operator, Lieutenant Jennifer Adams. Jennifer had been working air traffic control before the invasion, but her skills with tracking multiple moving objects had proven invaluable for space-based operations. Alex studied the sensor data with growing concern. The approaching Vorthak fleet was larger than intelligence estimates had suggested, and the massive energy signature at its center was unlike anything humans had previously encountered. "Transmit all data to Fleet Command immediately," he ordered, "and prepare to withdraw to defensive positions." The human response to the approaching threat was swift and coordinated. Admiral Victoria Stone positioned the main battle fleet in Earth orbit, while smaller task forces took up positions throughout the solar system. The defensive plan was complex and multi-layered, designed to exploit human advantages in mobility and technological adaptation. Captain Lisa Park commanded the orbital defense platform Guardian from its position above Earth's North Pole. Lisa had been transferred from her position on the space station Liberty Point to oversee the massive weapons array that had been constructed to protect the home World. All defensive systems report ready, she announced to the global command network. Quantum disruption generators are online, and we have full coverage of all approach vectors. Dr. Sandra Kim worked in her laboratory aboard the research station Einstein, putting the finishing touches on humanity's latest technological breakthrough. Sandra had been studying faster-than-light communication when the crisis began. But now she had developed something far more ambitious, a device capable of disrupting hyperspace itself. The hyperspace inhibitor field is ready for activation, she reported. If we can trap the Vorthak fleet in normal space, their numerical advantage will be significantly reduced. The concept was revolutionary. By preventing faster-than-light travel in a localized area, human forces could control the pace and location of any engagement. It was another example of human innovation, finding applications that the original technology's creators had never imagined. On the industrial world of New Birmingham in Sector 5, factory supervisor Robert Chen coordinated the final production runs of specialized anti-ship missiles. Robert had been managing electronics manufacturing before the invasion, but now he oversaw the production of weapons that incorporated the most advanced technology in human space. Final batch of quantum-tipped warheads completed, he reported to the Weapons Coordination Center. Total inventory now exceeds 50,000 units. The numbers represented a staggering accomplishment. In less than 3 years, humanity had gone from having no space-based weapons to possessing one of the largest and most advanced arsenals in the galaxy. Every missile incorporated lessons learned from previous engagements and improvements developed through constant innovation. Grand Admiral Colves received his first indication that something was wrong when his fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the human solar system. Instead of the relatively primitive defenses he expected, sensors detected a massive network of fortifications, weapons platforms, and mobile defense units that rivaled the best military installations in Vorthak space. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Our last reports indicated minimal human defensive capabilities." "Sir, it appears the humans have constructed an entire defensive grid in less than 6 months," came the reply. "The scale of construction is unprecedented for any species we've encountered." Colves studied the tactical displays with growing unease. The humans had somehow anticipated the attack and prepared accordingly. Worse, preliminary scans indicated that their defensive systems incorporated technology that appeared to be more advanced than standard Vorthak equipment. The first skirmishes began when human patrol vessels made contact with Vorthak scouts near the orbit of Neptune. Captain Derek Hayes led a squadron of modified fighters in hit and run, attacks that demonstrated the continued evolution of human tactics and technology. "Enemy shields are adapting to our weapons," reported his wingman, Lieutenant Sarah Thompson. Sarah had been The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours and ended not with human victory, but with something far more significant: the complete reversal of galactic power dynamics. When the smoke cleared and the wreckage stopped falling, over 1,100 Vorthak warships drifted powerless in space, their crews either dead or captured. The massive Starkiller weapon had been turned against its creators, vaporizing 3 Vorthak dreadnoughts before human engineers successfully captured and reprogrammed the device. Captain Alex Stone stood on the bridge of his battle-scarred cruiser Phoenix, watching as human salvage teams systematically stripped useful technology from the floating alien hulks. Alex had led the decisive assault that penetrated the Vorthak defensive perimeter, but the victory felt different from their previous engagements. This time, humanity had not just defended itself, it had demonstrated absolute technological and tactical superiority. Intelligence. Reports from captured enemy personnel are coming in, announced his communications officer, Lieutenant Mark Williams. Mark had been working for a telecommunications company before the invasion, but his expertise with signal processing had made him invaluable for intercepting and analyzing alien communications. Alex reviewed the data on his command display with growing interest. The captured Vorthak officers had revealed the locations of major Imperial installations, military bases, and industrial centers throughout their territory. More importantly, they had provided detailed information about other alien species and the political structure of local galactic civilization. "Prepare a full report for Fleet Command," he ordered. and begin plotting courses to these industrial targets. If we move quickly, we can hit them before they have time to prepare defenses. The decision to take the war directly to Vorthak territory had been made during the final hours of the battle for Earth. Admiral Victoria Stone had realized that simply defeating the invasion fleet would not be sufficient to ensure human security. The Vorthak Empire was vast and powerful, with the resources to mount future attacks unless their capability to wage war was permanently eliminated. Dr. Nathan Price worked in his laboratory aboard the captured Vorthak command ship Eternal Dominion, studying the Empire's most advanced military technology. Nathan had been instrumental in developing human defensive systems, but now he had access to weapons and equipment that represented centuries of alien research and development. Their quantum cascade weapons are actually inferior to our latest designs, he reported to the Research Coordination Network. We've been approaching energy manipulation from more efficient angles than they ever considered. The discovery was both encouraging and sobering. Human scientists had not simply copied alien technology, they had improved upon it in ways that the original designers had never imagined. The implications for future conflicts were staggering. Engineer Grace Turner supervised the construction of humanity's first mobile shipyard, a massive facility capable of producing warships while traveling between star systems. Grace had revolutionized human manufacturing capabilities with her self-replicating construction systems. But this project represented the ultimate expression of her innovations. We'll be able to build a complete battle fleet during our transit to Vorthak space, she explained to the assembled fleet commanders via holographic conference. By the time we arrive, our forces will be larger than what we started with. The concept of mobile manufacturing was another uniquely human innovation. Other species built their ships in fixed locations and transported them to where they were needed. Humans had realized that bringing the factory to the battlefield offered significant tactical advantages. Captain Derek Hayes led the first human expedition beyond their local galactic sector, commanding a task force of 50 ships on a mission to establish forward operating bases in former Vorthak territory. Derek had distinguished himself during reconnaissance operations, and his ability to think strategically made him ideal for the expanded role of interstellar conquest. Long-range sensors are detecting a major Vorthak industrial complex in the Kepler 438 system, reported his science officer, Dr. Lisa Chen. Lisa had been studying astrophysics before the invasion, but now she applied her knowledge to identifying strategic targets for military operations. Derek studied the sensor data with satisfaction. The facility appeared to be a major shipbuilding center, exactly the kind of target that would cripple Vorthak's ability to rebuild their military forces. Signal the fleet. We'll hit them at maximum speed before they know we're coming. The attack on Kepler 438 demonstrated the new reality of human warfare. Instead of the careful, methodical approach favored by most galactic civilizations, human forces struck with overwhelming speed and violence. The Vorthak defenders had prepared for a conventional siege, but found themselves facing an enemy that bypassed their fixed fortifications and struck directly at critical infrastructure. Commander Rachel Foster led a squadron of assault craft in the attack on the primary manufacturing facility. Rachel had become one of humanity's most experienced combat pilots, and her tactics reflected the evolution of human space warfare from desperate defense to aggressive conquest. Primary target neutralized, she reported as alien construction platforms exploded in brilliant flashes of white fire. Secondary objectives are undefended. Moving to secure useful equipment. The raid lasted less than 6 hours, but its effects would be felt throughout the Vorthak Empire. Not only had humans destroyed a major military production facility, but they had also captured enough advanced manufacturing equipment to enhance their own industrial capabilities. Dr. Jennifer Wallace studied the various alien species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak Empire, developing protocols for their liberation and potential integration into human-controlled space. Jennifer had become humanity's leading expert on xenobiology, and her work was crucial for managing the complex political situation that was emerging in conquered territory. Most of the subject species appear to be peaceful by nature, she reported to the Colonial Administration Council. They were conquered by the Vorthak centuries ago and forced to provide labor and resources. With proper treatment, they could become valuable allies. The discovery of enslaved alien populations had added a moral dimension to human expansion that complicated military planning. Humanity's leaders were forced to balance the immediate need for security with longer-term considerations about their role in galactic civilization. Admiral Patricia Ross commanded the human fleet from her flagship, Retribution, as it moved deeper into Vorthak space, leaving a trail of destroyed military installations and liberated worlds in its wake. Patricia had proven herself to be a master of interstellar warfare, combining strategic brilliance with the tactical flexibility that had become the hallmark of human military operations. Intelligence. Reports indicate the Vorthak are attempting to consolidate their remaining forces around their homeworld, announced her intelligence officer, Colonel Marcus Johnson. Marcus had been responsible for planning many of humanity's most successful operations, and his analysis of enemy movements was invaluable for strategic planning. Patricia studied the tactical displays showing Vorthak fleet movements. The aliens were finally beginning to understand the true scope of the threat they faced, but their response was too little and too late. Then we'll accommodate them. Begin preparations for Operation Prometheus. Operation Prometheus was humanity's plan for the final assault on the Vorthak homeworld, a complex operation that would involve simultaneous attacks on multiple targets throughout the core Imperial territory. The goal was not just military victory, but the complete dismantling of the Vorthak Empire as a political and military entity. Captain Nicole Adams led specialized teams in capturing and studying Vorthak government facilities, gathering intelligence about the Empire's administrative structure and resource networks. Nicole had developed expertise in alien psychology during the war, and her insights were crucial for understanding how to effectively occupy and control former enemy territory. The Vorthak administrative system is highly centralized, she reported, after analyzing captured documents. If we can take control of their primary government computers, we'll effectively control their entire remaining territory. The revelation opened up new possibilities for rapid conquest. Instead of fighting for every world individually, humanity could potentially take control of the entire Vorthak Empire by capturing key administrative centers and communication hubs. Engineering teams led by Captain Steve Rodriguez worked to adapt captured alien infrastructure for human use, developing techniques for rapidly converting enemy facilities to support human operations. Steve had become an expert in alien technology integration, and his innovations were allowing humanity to maintain control over vast territories with relatively small occupation forces. We can have former Vorthak industrial centers producing human equipment within weeks of capture, he reported to the Occupation Command Structure. Their manufacturing technology is compatible with our designs, and their automated systems can be reprogrammed to follow human directives. The efficiency of human conquest was shocking even to the humans themselves. Worlds that had been part of the Vorthak Empire for centuries were being transformed into human territory in a matter of months. The speed of change was unprecedented. The war had evolved beyond anything the galaxy had witnessed in recorded history. What had begun as a simple conquest attempt by the Vorthak Empire had transformed into a complete restructuring of galactic civilization, with humanity emerging as the dominant military and technological force across dozens of star systems. The speed and scope of human expansion had shattered every assumption about how interstellar conflicts were supposed to unfold. Admiral Patricia Ross stood in the command center of her flagship Devastator, watching holographic displays that showed human fleets operating simultaneously across 47 different star systems. Patricia had been promoted to Supreme Allied Commander of all human military forces, a position that required her to coordinate operations spanning thousands of light years and involving millions of personnel. Status report from all operational sectors, she requested, her voice carrying the authority that came from 3 years of successful interstellar warfare. Colonel Marcus Johnson stepped forward from his position at the Strategic Analysis Station. Marcus had become humanity's foremost expert on large-scale military operations, and his tactical innovations had been instrumental in many of their most successful campaigns. Sector 7 reports complete pacification of the Draconis cluster, he announced, highlighting star systems on the main display. Resistance in the Vega industrial complex has been eliminated, and our forces are moving to secure the primary manufacturing facilities. The numbers were staggering. Human military forces now controlled territory that had taken the Vorthak Empire centuries to conquer, and they had accomplished this expansion in less than 2 years. The transformation from a single world species to a galactic superpower was unprecedented in the known history of the galaxy. Captain Brian Kelly commanded the assault fleet that was systematically dismantling Vorthak defensive positions throughout the Perseus Arm. Brian had been a logistics coordinator before the invasion, but his talent for organizing complex operations had made him invaluable for planning and executing large-scale military campaigns. Primary defensive grid in the Altair system has been neutralized, he reported. Through the quantum communication network, enemy forces are withdrawing to their secondary positions, but our advanced units are already moving to intercept them. The Vorthak military doctrine had been based on the assumption that their enemies would attack predictably, following established patterns of interstellar warfare that had remained unchanged for millennia. Human forces had completely abandoned these conventions, striking simultaneously from multiple directions and using tactics that made no sense according to traditional galactic military theory. Dr. Angela Lopez worked in her mobile laboratory aboard the command ship Prometheus, analyzing captured Vorthak computer systems and extracting intelligence about enemy operations and capabilities. Angela had developed techniques for rapidly cracking alien encryption and communication protocols, giving humanity unprecedented insight into enemy planning and intentions. We've gained access to their primary strategic database, she announced during the daily intelligence briefing. The Vorthak High Command is in complete disarray. They're no longer coordinating their defensive efforts effectively. The psychological impact of human tactics was proving as important as their technological advantages. The Vorthak military leadership had been trained to fight conventional wars against predictable enemies. Human forces moved too quickly, struck too aggressively, and adapted too rapidly for traditional defensive strategies to be effective. Engineer David Price led the rapid deployment teams that were converting captured alien infrastructure for human use. David had revolutionized the process of technology integration, developing techniques that allowed human forces to take control of enemy facilities and begin using them for their own purposes within days of capture. Industrial Complex Alpha 7 is now producing human equipment at full capacity, he reported from his position aboard the mobile command platform. We're actually exceeding the original Vorthak production quotas by 30%. The efficiency of human conquest was shocking even to experienced military observers from other species. Worlds that had been integral parts of the Vorthak Empire for centuries were being transformed into human territory faster than most. Civilizations could even process the political implications. Captain Emma Rodriguez commanded the Deep Penetration task force that had successfully infiltrated the core systems of the Vorthak Empire, striking at targets that the aliens had considered completely secure. Emma had developed specialties in stealth operations and electronic warfare, making her forces nearly invisible to enemy sensors until they were ready to attack. Primary communication hub in the Rigel system has been captured intact, she reported through encrypted channels. We now have access to real-time intelligence about all remaining Vorthak military operations. The capture of enemy communication networks had given humanity an unprecedented advantage in coordinating their own operations while disrupting enemy responses. Human forces could anticipate Vorthak movements and counter them before the aliens even realized their plans had been compromised. Dr. Lisa Turner worked with teams of specialists to analyze the political and economic structure of the collapsing Vorthak Empire, developing strategies for managing the vast territories that were falling under human control. Lisa had become an expert on alien governmental systems, and her insights were crucial for establishing effective occupation policies. The Empire's tributary system is collapsing faster than we anticipated, she reported during a conference with human leadership. Dozens of subject species are declaring independence and requesting human protection from potential Vorthak retaliation. The unexpected political ramifications of human expansion were creating opportunities and challenges that no one had anticipated. Species that had been enslaved by the Vorthak for centuries were suddenly free, but they lacked the military capability to defend their newfound independence without human support. Admiral Scott Mitchell led the task force responsible for establishing human control over former Vorthak naval bases and shipyards. Scott had proven himself to be exceptionally skilled at coordinating complex occupation operations, and his forces were responsible for securing some of humanity's most important strategic victories. Shipyard Complex Delta is now under human control, he announced from his flagship Liberator. We've captured over 200 partially completed Vorthak warships, plus complete manufacturing facilities and technical databases. The captured alien military infrastructure was being rapidly converted to produce human designs, but the real value lay in the technical knowledge that humanity was acquiring. Each captured facility provided insights into Vorthak technology and manufacturing techniques that could be adapted to improve human capabilities. Captain Sarah Thompson led reconnaissance missions deep into unexplored regions of Vorthak space, gathering intelligence about potential threats and opportunities beyond the immediate theater of operations. Sarah had become one of humanity's most experienced long-range scouts, and her reports were crucial for strategic planning. Long-range scans have detected massive defensive installations around the Vorthak homeworld, she reported through secure communication channels. The aliens appear to be concentrating their remaining forces for a final defensive stand. The intelligence confirmed what human leadership had expected. The Vorthak Empire was making its last stand around their homeworld, gathering every available ship and defensive system for what they hoped would be a decisive battle, but they had not yet grasped the true scope of human military capabilities. General Amy Chen coordinated ground operations on dozens of occupied worlds, establishing human administration and integrating useful alien populations into the expanding human sphere of influence. Amy had developed expertise in managing complex multi-species populations, and her policies were serving as models for human expansion throughout the galaxy. Pacification operations are proceeding ahead of schedule, she reported from her headquarters on the former Vorthak world of Kepler Prime. Local populations are adapting to human administration more quickly than projected, and productivity is actually increasing under our management. The success of human occupation policies was attracting attention from other alien civilizations, some of which were beginning to view human expansion as potentially beneficial rather than threatening. The contrast with Vorthak methods of control was stark and obvious. Dr. Kevin Martinez led research teams that were studying captured Vorthak weapons technology and developing countermeasures against potential threats from other alien civilizations. Kevin had become humanity's leading expert on alien military technology, and his innovations were keeping human forces ahead of their enemies in technological capability. Analysis of captured Vorthak weapon systems suggests they were designed primarily for fighting other Vorthak-level civilizations, he reported during a technical briefing. Their effectiveness against human tactics and technology is significantly limited. The revelation explained much about human success in the conflict. The Vorthak had developed their melee. The purple skies of Kethmoran burned with the light of falling human warships as Emperor Drexmore stood in his palace tower, watching the final destruction of everything his ancestors had built over the course of a millennium. The Vorthak homeworld's orbital defenses had fallen in less than 6 hours, overwhelmed by human tactics that seemed to ignore every established rule of galactic warfare. Admiral Victoria Stone commanded the human fleet from her flagship Judgment, watching as the last Vorthak resistance crumbled under the coordinated assault of 300 human warships. Victoria had led humanity's military forces through their transformation from desperate defenders to galactic conquerors, and this final victory represented the culmination of humanity's most ambitious military campaign. Enemy defensive grid is completely neutralized, reported Captain Frank Miller from his position at the tactical station. Frank had become Victoria's most trusted operations officer, and his coordination of the complex multi-fleet assault had been flawless. Victoria studied the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of Vorthak military installations across their homeworld. The aliens had fought with desperate courage, but their weapons and tactics were no match for human innovation and overwhelming technological superiority. Begin landing operations, she commanded. Secure all government facilities and communication centers. I want complete control of their administrative systems within 12 hours. The ground assault was led by General Patricia Johnson, who had developed expertise in rapid planetary occupation during the conquest of dozens of former Vorthak worlds. Patricia's forces moved with precision and overwhelming force, but their primary objective was capture rather than destruction. Primary government complex secured, she reported from her command post in the Vorthak capital city. Emperor Drexmore and his senior advisors are in custody. Resistance has ceased in all major population centers. The capture of the Vorthak leadership marked the official end of an empire that had dominated local galactic politics for over 1,000 years. But the real significance of the victory lay not in the military conquest itself, but in what it demonstrated about humanity's capabilities and intentions. Dr. Jennifer Wallace worked with teams of specialists to process the thousands of Vorthak prisoners and displaced populations, implementing policies that had been developed during the occupation of dozens of other former imperial worlds. Jennifer had become humanity's leading expert on managing multi-species populations, and her methods were being adopted throughout human-controlled space. Classification of prisoner populations is proceeding according to established protocols, she reported to the Colonial Administration Council. Useful technical personnel and cooperative civilians are being integrated into productive roles. Hostile elements are being relocated to designated containment facilities. The efficiency of human occupation policies was remarkable. Within weeks of conquest, former Vorthak territory was functioning more effectively under human administration than it had under the original imperial system. The contrast was not lost on other alien civilizations that were watching human expansion with growing concern. Captain Alex Rodriguez led the teams responsible for securing and analyzing the vast databases contained within the Vorthak Imperial Archives. Alex had developed expertise in alien information systems during the war, and his discoveries were providing humanity with unprecedented insight into galactic civilization and politics. The Imperial records contained detailed information about over 200 intelligent species throughout this galactic sector. He reported during a briefing with human leadership. We now have complete star charts, technological assessments, and political analyses that span thousands of years of galactic history. The intelligence treasure trove was beyond anything humanity had hoped to capture. The Vorthak Empire had been meticulous record keepers, and their archives contained information that would guide human expansion and diplomacy for generations to come. Engineer Grace Turner supervised the systematic dismantling of Vorthak military infrastructure, converting useful equipment for human purposes while ensuring that any remaining Imperial forces could never again pose a threat. Grace had perfected techniques for rapidly processing captured alien technology, and her methods were being applied across hundreds of conquered worlds. Industrial conversion of the primary shipyards is proceeding ahead of schedule, she announced. From her position aboard the mobile command platform Prometheus, we'll be producing human-designed vessels using Vorthak facilities within 30 days. The speed of technological integration continued to amaze even experienced human engineers. Alien manufacturing systems that had taken centuries to develop were being adapted for human use in a matter of weeks, demonstrating the remarkable flexibility of human engineering approaches. Dr. Nathan Price led research teams that were analyzing the most advanced Vorthak weapons and defensive systems, developing countermeasures against potential threats from other galactic civilizations. Nathan had become humanity's premier expert on alien military technology, and his innovations were keeping human forces ahead of any potential enemies. Analysis of their quantum cascade generators suggests possible applications for planetary engineering, he reported during a technical conference. We might be able to use modified versions of their weapons to terraform worlds more efficiently than any existing technology. The discovery that enemy weapons could be converted into tools for peaceful development was typical of human innovation. Where other species saw military technology as having limited applications, humans found ways to adapt almost any system for multiple purposes. Admiral Scott Chen commanded the occupation fleets that were establishing permanent human control over the most strategically important former Vorthak territories. Scott had proven himself to be exceptionally skilled at managing complex multi-system operations, and his forces were responsible for securing humanity's new galactic empire. Strategic survey of former Imperial territory is complete, he reported from his flagship Dominion. We've identified 37 systems suitable for immediate human colonization and 63 more that could support human populations with minimal Terraforming. The scope of human expansion was staggering. In less than 4 years, humanity had gone from a single world species to controlling territory that could support billions of human colonists across dozens of star systems. The transformation was unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Sarah Williams led diplomatic missions to the dozens of alien species that had been liberated from Vorthak control, establishing trade relationships and alliance agreements that were rapidly expanding human influence beyond their military conquests. Sarah had developed expertise in alien psychology and diplomacy, and her negotiations were proving crucial for stabilizing the post-war political situation. The Harmony Collective has agreed to a comprehensive alliance, she announced during a diplomatic briefing. They're offering technological exchanges and mutual defense, agreements in return for human protection against potential aggression from other galactic powers. The diplomatic success was as important as military victory. Human expansion was creating a network of allied species that provided both economic opportunities and strategic depth for future conflicts. Dr. Lisa Martinez worked with teams of xenobiologists and social scientists to study the various alien populations that were now under human administration, developing policies that maximized their contributions while ensuring their loyalty to human authority. Lisa had become an expert on multi-species governance, and her methods were serving as models for human expansion throughout the galaxy. Integration protocols are showing remarkable success rates, she reported to the Colonial Administration Council. Former Vortex subject species are adapting to human authority more readily than projected, and many are actively requesting increased human involvement in their local governance. The success of human administration was attracting attention from independent alien civilizations, some of which were beginning to request voluntary integration into the expanding human sphere of influence. The contrast with previous imperial methods was stark and compelling. General Kevin Thompson coordinated the establishment of permanent human military bases throughout former Vorthak territory, ensuring that humanity's new empire would be defended against any potential threats. Kevin had developed expertise in strategic base placement and logistics, and his network of installations was making human control of conquered territory essentially unshakable. Defense grid establishment is proceeding according to schedule, he reported from his headquarters on the former imperial world of Rigel. Prime. We'll have complete military coverage of all major systems within 6 months. The defensive infrastructure was being built to standards that exceeded anything the Vorthak had ever achieved. Human engineering efficiency combined with captured alien technology was creating military installations that could withstand attacks from any conceivable enemy. The final ceremony took place in the former imperial throne room on Keth Morin, where Ambassador Catherine Young officially accepted the unconditional surrender of all remaining Vorthak forces and formally established human authority over